It's not him doing this. It's the other government that everybody should be disappointed in, bringing this case against the sitting mayor.
Mayor Eric Adams' lawyer fiercely defending New York's leader after appearing before a judge in federal court.
The entire body of evidence is one staffer. What you have not learned is that that staffer has lied.
The feds charging Mr. Adams on 5 counts of bribery and fraud.
The free upgrades or free tickets altogether, the hotel stays, and the value.
New Yorkers reacting to the historic news.
New Yorkers deserve better, and we need strong leadership, and we need agencies right now in very much disarray.
There's a lot going on. I think he's a good guy, and I think he deserves a fair chance.
And if he loved New York City, he would resign.
Now growing calls for the mayor to step down for the sake of the city.
New Yorkers deserve a mayor who's focused on their problems and not his own. No one could give this city the leadership it requires while facing charges this serious.
But Adams remains adamant he will come out on top.
I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgment.
This is PIX on Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Manarino, and welcome to a special edition of PIX on Politics. History made in New York City. A sitting mayor indicted on federal charges. So let's break this all down because there is certainly a lot to discuss. Friday afternoon, Mayor Eric Adams faced a judge pleading not guilty to taking bribes and illegal campaign contributions. But the usual outspoken mayor, silent after court letting his lawyer do the talking. Adams' defense team saying they plan to file a motion to dismiss those charges next Wednesday. Those charges: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, bribery, and 2 counts of solicitation of campaign contributions from a foreign national. And then what played out on Friday. More raids in the afternoon. The home of Chief Advisor to Mayor Adams, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, raided by state and federal investigators. Her phones also taken when she landed back in the U.S. after a trip overseas at the airport. But her attorney believes she is not the target of any case or any investigation. So the question now, aside from the court proceedings, what happens next for the mayor? What happens next for New York City? Many calls are happening right now for Adam to resign. But Governor Kathy Hochul does have the power to remove him from office. So as part of a lengthy statement following the indictment, Governor Hochul said, quote, "It is now up to Mayor Adams to show the city that he is able to lead in that matter," end quote. So certainly a lot of questions on whether the mayor will step down, be forced to, and what this means for you, the voter, right? We're tackling all of that right now in our PIX panel. And joining me this week, PIX 11 reporter James Ford, who was inside the courthouse for Mayor Adams' arraignment. Reporter for the city, Katie Honan, great to have you back. And Associate Professor of Political Science at John Jay College, Susan Kang. Great to have you for your first appearance, Susan. And so let me begin, James, with you. You were inside the courthouse for this historic day. By the way, I mean, talk about history. It's the first time that a sitting mayor is indicted on federal charges inside the same courthouse that a former president was indicted on federal corruption charges. Federal charges. Let's talk about what played out inside the courtroom today. Paint a picture, because cameras, for those who don't know at home, are not allowed inside a federal courthouse.
Right. It's only sketches. And listen, talk about that nexus of history, right? Courtroom 26B, the same one where the E. Jean Carroll hearing with Donald Trump was heard. I mean, it was remarkable. And the mayor, though, was remarkably stoic, said nothing unless he was addressed by the judge. But it was also fascinating. I mean, I've certainly covered other federal cases, and here he was being read his rights like any criminal defendant, because he's a criminal defendant. Right. I mean, it was truly, truly remarkable. But his attorney, Alex Spiro, was very clear that they intend to file a motion to dismiss, and that once all of the evidence is in his possession, it is somehow going to lead to this case getting thrown out. That's really wishful thinking, but it is the approach they're planning on taking, and count on hearing a lot of that going forward.
Right, and it was a thumbs up for Mayor Adams on the way in and a thumbs out coming out. Adams' lawyer saying the case is based, though, James, on a staffer who lied, right? And that there was no proof to the 5 counts in this indictment. But Katie, 2 things. Any indication who that staffer is, right? Because there was no names in the indictment. And tell us more about the indictment itself. Some of these charges, you've covered this for 10 months now. Some of these charges that involve the Turkish government and the country and a consulate and the FDNY.
Yeah, so the staffer, many sources have said, is Rana Abasova, who was fired last year, and she hasn't spoken out since, but that is who, she worked for the mayor when he was borough president, and she also worked for him in a specific agency. And then also, towards the end, before all of this, before the phones were seized last year, she was working in advance for him. I'd see her at events. And the indictment lays out what the federal prosecutors are laying out is this widespread and years-long corruption of the mayor before he was the mayor by Turkish nationals, giving him lavish hotel stays and upgrades on airlines in exchange for help here in the city. Yeah. One that I know myself and my colleagues have written a lot about was the Turkish embassy, the Turkish consulate in Midtown, kind of cutting the line so it can open, the sort of long, it was known as the DMO list. It was a list kept internally of things that fast-tracked projects to get inspected by the fire department. And that, what's interesting is his lawyer has not, he just talks about the airline stuff, he doesn't talk about the other things. And the thing that I found interesting in the indictment was looking at, the phone password. I know it's something that was sort of funny. When the mayor had to turn his phone over, he said he changed his password but forgot the password. The other former staffer tried to delete these messaging apps that the feds alleged she was using.
During a meeting with the federal agent saying, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom, and then allegedly deleted the app.
Yeah, so they're really dismissive of a lot of, his lawyer is dismissive of a lot of the stuff. And I know earlier today the mayor met with his staffers at City Hall and gave a kind of a pep talk of, I know things are hard. If you have any questions, I'm innocent. So I think he's trying to right the ship, especially internally, of his staff so they continue to do the work they're supposed to do.
Yeah, what's interesting, Susan, is what we saw play out as well on Friday, which was this other raid of his chief advisor, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, right? So in a case like this, when there is an indictment, the charges are laid out, but then the Southern District Attorney, the attorney of the Southern District, Damian Williams, came out and said, if you have any new information, come forward. And their raids are still taking place. So what does that mean for the mayor? While he's facing these charges, the investigation is seemingly still going on.
I think the mayor is going to do the best he can to make it seem like the case is based on allegations or hearsay, but I think that the fact that there's so many top brass at the city who are leaving, especially his council, suggests that a lot of people know that their association with the mayor is just going to sully them. So he has to put forward a public face that he's capable of governing. He did say in response to the early calls for his resignation that, oh, you believe in criminal justice reform, because these were all like left and progressive politicians, but you don't want me to step down. He's confusing two things. The criminal justice system, yes, of course, he had the same rights as any other criminal defendant, but he needs public confidence, right, in order to govern effectively, and that is a question, I think, that is up in the air. And I think a lot of people will say, if you talk to the average New Yorker, they're very confused and they're not feeling confident about his ability to govern at all. If you're going to be a criminal defendant, what time do you have to make sure the buses are running on time, or doing his war on rats, right?
Well, and let's talk about what happened earlier in the week, because it feels like a lifetime ago, but the school's chancellor resigned.
That was this week?
That was right, exactly.
And I'm a parent, and I've been talking to other parents about this, and they're like, why is this happening in the middle of the third week of the school year? Like, what does this mean for funding? What does it mean for how our schools are run? I'm getting all these emails from the chancellor, and I'm like, oh wow, some lame duck messaging, right? But us parents are left in the dark.
But think about what happened right after that, James, because you were on that story of the school's chancellor resigning. We broke that story, by the way, here on PIX 11. And it was like, what was it? Less than 24 hours later, we're talking about an indictment.
Right. No, it's remarkable. Yeah. And I was there as well when the chancellor made his big swan song. And it's just fascinating that, as you're saying, hours later, less than a day later, that just the remarkable nature of him stepping down from the largest school district in the country just blown off the news radar by this other major development with the mayor. It's just fascinating.
And the questions of confidence are certainly out there, right? The mayor, Katie, has been adamant that he is not going anywhere, that he's going to resign. But talk about kind of the process of what plays out hypothetically, right? The mayor says, I'm going to remain in office. Governor Kathy Hochul, let's just get to a statement for her real quick, saying that Adams needs to show the city that he can lead. And she seems to be putting the onus on the mayor over the next couple of days, letting him think about this before she, who's the only person in the state that has the power, to remove him.
Yeah, so I got the sense from that as well. It seems like she's thinking of her own political capital and her own political future. Does she want to be the one to say to the city's second black mayor, leave? Or does she want him to kind of come to that conclusion? The Reverend Al Sharpton in the coming days is convening what he's calling an emergency meeting with city and state leaders. I think a lot of the people who are calling on Mayor Adams to step down, he doesn't care about their opinion, respectfully. A lot of people do, but the mayor doesn't, based on their political allegiances and that kind of thing. But I think there are people who he does care about. The Reverend Sharpton is one. The other way that the mayor could, if he doesn't step down, if Governor Hochul decides not to force him to step down, there's the Mayoral Inability Committee. It's a 5-member panel. The city controller, who's already called on him to resign, the longest-standing deputy mayor in the city, which is Donovan Richardson Queens, the council, who it's an interim right now because they never replaced, the speaker of the city council, and the 5th person who I can't remember.
Yeah,
but you need 4 of the 5 to vote for that.
But it's one of those things where, yes, that's all going on. But Susan, from the political science world of things, can he effectively do what you were talking about? Can he effectively lead the city confidently and tell New Yorkers, you can trust me to get things done, including the trash and the war and rest, whatever it may be, that he can effectively do it with all of this swirling around, with vacancies and resignations and more raids of his chief advisor? Can he do it?
Before all these resignations happened, Eric Adams already had the lowest approval ratings since these polls have been taking place in New York City. He also had something like 17% of New Yorkers said that they would vote for him again. So he had abysmally low approval ratings and confidence before this all happened. I don't know what the current data looks like, if there's going to be a poll, but I'm going to guess it's going to be very low, maybe even single digits. So the question also, I really like what you said about what's Hochul's political calculation. Hochul spoke at the DNC. Hochul is the governor of a deep blue state, I hope deep blue state, at a time where the biggest city in the country has a sitting mayor who's a Democrat that has allegations and a serious indictment against him. So she also has to make the calculation in a very tight general election for the president. What is she doing for Washington, for the National Democrats? I think that there's a lot of things that are weighing on her mind.
Right. So there's a lot of what comes next, including, I believe, the court date for the mayor, which is next Wednesday. And that is where they hope to have the case dismissed.
Yeah.
But last words here. That is a long time away, and this is rapidly changing. So between the two of you here, because you work in your sources, more resignations before next Wednesday, Katie?
That's been the rumor, and I honestly, I can believe anything at this point. Everything is happening so quickly, and I think it depends on a lot of things, what the Reverend Sharpton thinks, if there's even further raids. We don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know what kind of pressure the mayor's going to be under, even for him or some of his top staff, who also had their phones seized in separate raids.
James?
I do agree. We will, I think, between now and Wednesday, we will see more resignations. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll leave it at that. We will see more.
And I feel bad for the new chancellor, who really didn't even get a moment because all of this kind of swept that. There is a new chancellor, which we hope to have on this very show. We'll extend the invitation. I know you're looking for that interview as well,
James.
That is true. Right? So stick with that. James, Katie, Susan, great to have you here all on this very important night. Lots of legal questions surrounding this unprecedented indictment against the mayor. So next, I'm sitting down with a former federal prosecutor for more insight on the long road ahead. PIX on Politics, back in a few minutes.